Hello, everyone. Nice to see so many people here, so many faces that I recognize this evening. So welcome. Welcome to our second SZBA Dharma Talk, and thanks to Chimyo Atkinson for being our speaker this evening. I just wanted to tell you all a little bit about Chimyo. Chimyo was ordained as a priest, a Soto Zen Buddhist in the Soto Zen Buddhist tradition in 2007 and received Dharma transition in 2015. She received her monastic training at Great Tree Zen Women's Temple in North Carolina and completed Soto Shu international training periods in Japan in 2010 and 2011 and at Ramonji in 2014. Chimyo has been on the board, the SZBA board, since 2015. Thank you so much for your service, Chimyo. We really appreciate that. And she also serves on the board of ASZB. So thank you again, Chimyo, and I'll let you take it over.
Well, thank you, everybody. Glad to be here tonight. And let's see. Well, basically, what I said I was going to talk about is my experience with monastic practice. This has been on my mind for a while since I most recently left my temple back in the fall and have been outside of monastic practice for the first time in 10 years. So this very big change in my life is in the forefront of what I'm feeling and my practice these past few months. Monastic practice is something that I really treasure, or my experience with monastic practice so far is something that I really treasure. So it's not something that I walked away from easily. It's been a training for me that has brought forth a lot of things, that self-reflection. It's brought forth a lot of self-criticism as well, because as a human being, you know, we have these sides of us that we don't want to see. It's brought forth a lot of surprises in terms of how I have moved in the world up until this point, up until certain points where I could suddenly see something about myself and the way I move in the world that surprised me, both in positive and negative ways. And it continues, you know, because this practice, anybody in Zen practice knows that this is not, this is a lifelong thing. And depending on your belief, maybe a process of many lives. And I've come to really know that. My first experience of being ordained back in 2007, I ordained under Reverend Teijo Munnich, who is at Great Tree, the founder of Great Tree Zen Temple, and a disciple of Dainin Katagiri of Minnesota. When I ordained, I had no idea what I was doing. And I put it to you that most of the people who do this ordination thing have no idea what's in store. And I didn't. I was profoundly ignorant. And in a sense, I'm absolutely grateful for being in that state, because coming from this culture, coming from this, having grown up as I have in this country, if you told me what this was really all about, I probably would have turned and walked out the door, out of just plain fear and fear of discomfort, fear of failure. So I didn't know what this was. I ordained in 2007, and for 3 years, I basically was not in monastic practice. I was still working. I was still dealing with the household bills. I was still dealing with family in a very normal way. You know, I had a job that I'd been at for almost 20 years, and was still dealing with that. Lots of debt, car payments and things like that. So my life was still very conventional, even after I ordained. I'd grown my hair back and all that. I went back to work. The only thing my teacher required of me at that time during those 3 years was that I show up for every session every month at Great Tree. Depending on what period of time we're talking about, we had session every month, except August. And I was to show up for that, and I did that as I vowed to do. She also told me not to wear earrings. Earrings and jewelry, which is, you know, since I didn't have very much in terms of jewelry, that wasn't a hard thing. But, you know, I'd show up for session on Friday. Sessions start on Friday evenings, usually at Great Tree. And I'd be wearing my hot pink, you know, top that I wore at work all day into the Zendo, because I would go after work, and you know, work ends at 5, hopefully, you know, and I'd end up at Great Tree somewhere around 8 o'clock, because it's a 3-hour drive from where I was living and where I was working. And so that was how I began my life as a monk. This was not really a monk. I was part of the, excuse me, I was part of the, I'm going to change my glasses here. I was part of the community at Great Tree, and I was part of the practice at Great Tree, but I really wasn't living as a monk. I was just basically coming in part-time. At a certain point, after 3 years, or actually after 2 years of doing that, my teacher told me that there was something that I needed to do in order to fulfill my monk's requirements, called Ango. Hadn't heard the word before, you know. I knew something of practice periods and things like that, but practice periods meant basically we had a program of some sort where we would read a certain book and have a certain study group or something like that, which is basically, you know, what you do in a lay, in a sort of lay sangha, or sangha that's made up mostly of lay people, which ours is. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a practice period, an appropriate practice period for that situation. And so that's what practice period meant to me. And then she said, oh, you got to go to this, you know, monastery for 3 months. And I'm like, how am I supposed to do that for 3 months? I got a job and all that. So, you know, at that particular time, I did not go. I think it was out in California somewhere. And she said, okay. And that didn't happen. But she had planted this sort of seed in my brain. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. I'm really supposed to do this. And it's not that she wasn't serious about it. She was, but of course, knowing what my situation was, she didn't push too hard. Second time she brought it up was the next year, and like, here it comes again. Here's this opportunity to go off to, Ango for 3 months, and it's in Japan. I'm like, what? Okay, and you have so many, months to get ready for this. And I think that at that first opportunity being missed, something clicked in my head that said, are you serious? What do you mean by that vow you took, that home leaver's vow? What did I mean? Not what did my teacher mean? Not what did the Soto Shu or whoever the governing body is mean, but what did I mean by that? I took ordination with the intention to change. What I was changing, what that change might mean, was not defined. I couldn't possibly have defined it. I might have had some ideas about what it would mean, but as I said, ignorant. But I knew something had to change. Something about me had to change. Something about the way I moved in the world had to change. Because this pursuit is not simply me saying I'm going to be a priest and putting on a robe or whatever. That's part of it. That's part of the that's part of what I'm maybe meant to do in some way. But before the robe goes on, or after, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter whether the robe is on or not. Regardless of what I place on my body in terms to signify that intent, the working of this practice and this Dharma and these intentions has to be going on within, underneath the layers of all these robes. And I knew something of that then. I think I did, or I can't really even articulate it right now, but there was this feeling. And suddenly, I had a pretty messy life. I had been the caretaker for my grandmother who had Alzheimer's. And so a lot of my personal life was was really out of control. My grandmother had at that point passed away, and I was in charge of this house that I could not possibly afford to take care of on my silly little, social services salary. And I had all this debt because I had a car that got totaled and I had to get a new one in order to get to work, to get to this job that, I had to get to in order to pay for the car because all of this, that make no sense. It was clearly making no sense. And there was a real feeling that even though I had taken these vows, they were over here. And I was living this life over here and kind of jumping from side to side in this confusion and never really absorbing those vows, never really acting in those vows, except in the sort of superficial sense, that I showed up for the things I was supposed to show up for, as delineated by my teacher. So in 2010, by 2010, for some reason, all the debt that I had spent years paying on and couldn't, could never get out from under was gone. A job that I had been, miserable in for 20 years, I put in a letter of resignation, written at my desk on a particular day, and and almost to the day that I had stepped into that office, I walked out of it. And I'm not going to say I wasn't afraid, and that I'm not going to say that it wasn't something that was, a big deal, but in a sense, looking back on it, it wasn't. I had, for the strangest reason, my family, who is very relatively conservative, they said, "Is that what you want to do? You gonna be okay?" And I said I was gonna be okay, because I was gonna be okay, regardless, because I'm kind of stubborn and that kind of thing. And I walked away, and at some point I was on a plane heading to Japan, that I'd only been to Japan once before for a couple of weeks, with my teacher, way back, maybe 10 years before. Can't even remember what year it was. And I got on a plane, and I ended up in this monastery on a mountain in Japan with 14 other Western people and some Japanese teachers, and we were doing it. We were doing something called Ango. It was difficult. It was hot, and then it was cold. There were people there who were difficult to deal with, including me. There was a schedule, that had me up at 3:00 in the morning. There were places in the middle of winter where you could not wear socks. There were rehearsals and lessons and lectures, and all kinds of things that were uncomfortable to deal with. Morning service lasted an hour and a half of bowing and chanting. And there was food, that I'd never seen before. Lots of seaweed. Absolutely cannot stand. And it was difficult. And it was 90 days of this. Now, it wasn't as if anybody were forcing me to do this. There was some sense in me that I couldn't walk away because my Sangha sent me there. And that's a very important thing. My Sangha sent me there. I was supported by my Sangha. They raised money. We had before I left, a few months before I left, we had a poetry reading. And it's since become a sort of tradition at Great Tree, because we have a lot of poets in the area, a lot of artists in the area, lots of arts people, writers, and so on. And we all got together and we had a poetry reading to raise money for my plane ticket. And these people raised money to send me there. In addition, the Danka around that temple at Shogoji was supporting us with food and money and gifts to run that ango. And the Soto Shu was supporting us being there. But when I got there, the only thing we had to pay for that 90-day ango was about $100 in donation to put into the donation box, and everything else was taken care of. Our food, our transportation to and from the airport, all that was taken care of. If somebody gets sick, that we were taken care of. And so I was clearly aware of that. But beyond that, at any point where I didn't want to take it anymore, all I had to do was pack my bags and call the cab. Nobody was making me stay there. Nobody was making anyone stay there. And yet we all stayed, even though it was hard, even though there were people, there were among us Western monks, people who were in tears, missing their loved ones. But that renunciation was important because it showed me where my line was in terms of giving up. And it was pretty close. Giving up your choice as to what you're going to eat every day and when you're going to eat every day, when you're going to get up in the morning, when you're going to, what you're going to do that day, being told even that I wasn't walking right, told how to walk, everything flattened out. All my ideas about who I was and what I was supposed to be doing and how I was supposed to, move in the world. It's kind of flattened out. And there were days that were so hard that, I always say this, I can always find a bathroom to cry in, and sometimes you just got to stand in the bathroom and let the tears flow and miss your old life, miss your family. Feel those bones aching in the bitter cold. And it would get like that. And the ego would just be busted. Everything I thought Chimyo was supposed to be and supposed to have. Why? And then there were days when there would be this really deep sense of freedom from all the stuff Chimyo is supposed to have and supposed to be and supposed to do. Same thing. All those things that, I had to set aside for those 3 months. On top of that, and this also went for, I did 3 angos in Japan, and I did 1 ango in Iowa. And always, you're there with people who are essentially strangers to you. it might be a lucky thing if you come from a Sangha and they send more than one of you at the same time. But in my experience, that didn't happen because I was the only one in my Sangha that would be there. And I did not have a whole lot of contact with other monks or nuns in America or in the West outside of Great Tree. So I didn't know anybody. Some of the other people knew each other. Some of them didn't like each other either. Some of them didn't like me. But by the end of that Ango, and don't think that, just because it's a bunch of Zen monks, I mean, I'm probably talking to some Zen monks, y'all know, we can behave as badly as anybody else. We can treat each other as badly as anybody out in the world. Because going into Ango or going into monastic life is not to escape all of that. All of that is right there with you. Your humanness doesn't change, and the humanness of other people doesn't change. We're always, at times, going to hurt each other, not be so nice, not act right, show out in some way. So all of those things happen the same way, and it's really intense, in a close set like that. And you can't run away with it like you can run away from work and go home, and come back the next day, with your plan to get revenge, whatever it is that we do. Very often, you're sleeping in the same room with whoever it is you've run up against. You are eating at the same table right across from the person you have run up against, or you're having to do some work with that person and cooperate with that person, all during the day and all during the night. That person's there, and there's at the Soto, we slept 8 to a room, and half the time we were face to face when we went to bed, because the room's not that big, so she's right there. Or sitting at the table next to you, because you have to sit in order of rank, and most likely whoever you're dealing with is same rank as you. She's right there, and you got to pass that bowl to her, and without all the baggage, hopefully without all the baggage. At the same time, I was just saying this with somebody else. I can't remember what I was talking about, but in the Ango, in the monastery, we're all doing these different jobs, different rios or different teams. There's a team for the kitchen, there's a team for the Zendo or the Soto, there's a team for the Hato, there's a team for the Kuin. All of these different teams that work together over the 3 months to clean and take care of the temple, to ring the bells, to do the timing and run and the drums and serve the meals in the Soto, and you have to work, and those are, there's a procedure for everything. And we all have to learn that procedure together, and we all have to do it not so precisely, but we have to do it in enough harmony to get it done by a certain time, and without making a mess, and making sure that the bells are rung on time, and so on. All of that. And sometimes who's ringing the bell, and sometimes you don't. but it doesn't matter who's ringing that bell. This monk still responds, you know. And sometimes, you know, it doesn't matter that the person that you just had a fight with is ringing the bell and making a call. It makes no difference. You still have to respond to what he or she did without the baggage. And that sounds obvious, you know, that sounds obvious until you're standing there hating on the bell because so-and-so is ringing it, and criticizing and you know, making something else out of the ringing of a bell instead of just responding as we should. But I'm kind of digressing, but basically what I want to say about monastic practice for me has been a source of discovery in this practice. Shikantaza is the basis of all that we're doing. It's just sitting, zazen, together. And sitting in a soto, and it's usually a dark kind of room in Japan, because it's got the outside porch, and it's got I can't remember which is which because I don't do Japan, the Gaido, the Naido, whatever it is, all of it, you know, a layer that makes that central room where the monks are sitting dark. And sitting on those tons in this sometimes very uncomfortable place and listening to your fellow monks moving, ringing bells, breathing, just living in Zazen. I can remember feeling that great weight of their presence all around me. It was my fellow trainees, the teachers, the officers, all of them there. Every morning, every evening, in those long 60-minute periods of Zazen. And it was a feeling of support, even in times when I was angry at someone. They were a part of that room that I was reaching out to in Zazen. And it's a really, really deep connection that comes in that almost silent room, that absolutely silent exchange of energy and of connection and harmony in those hours of Zazen, early in the morning and late in the evening. And I remember that same feeling of being in those hours, hour and a half long, morning ceremonies and noon ceremony, the evening ceremony, the special ceremonies of those voices all around me. My voice is thin. I don't have a very good chanting voice. My pronunciation and my rhythm in terms of chanting is always a little off, no matter how much I practice. If I do it by myself, if I chant by myself, that rhythm is wanky. But chanting in that room with everyone, chanting the sutras in the room with everyone, and being carried by their rhythm, being carried by those voices, was strengthening in this practice. It's beyond just support. It's a together. It's a true connection with those people. And I'm trying not to go on too long. I can go on forever. Let me stop. But yeah. And the funny thing is that even among, even with folks those particular folks that I might have had some issue with or might have had some issue with me, I can see them even today, and it will bring tears to my eyes. We may have spent only 90 days together, but really to become a part of that practice period, that ango, and to really not so much know someone and know the details of their lives, but to really have an intimate sort of connection to not a persona, but another being. And whether they're with their good and their bad, with their imperfections, and knowing that, and developing some empathy and for them, even beyond the difficulties in a relationship or in an interaction. So for me, that's been a big part of that. I'm kind of a shy person. I don't make friends easily. I'm not gonna run up in your party and flit around the room. I might sit in the corner and look at y'all. But in a ango situation, you can't do that. You're almost forced to interact and be with the people in that Soto, in that dining room, out in the garden, wherever you're interacting with them. So that's a very important part of it for me. The other part of ango, which is very hard for me to really talk about, is how it forms you as a practitioner. There's the very, or formed me. I'm not going to say you because I don't know what your experience is, but how it forms me as a practitioner. There's a very practical part of it where, yes, part of going to training Ango is to learn how to do stuff, learn how to do the rituals, learn how to take care of the daily practices of the temple, learn how to do the holiday parts of the temple, whether it's you know, a memorial or whether it's New Year's, whatever, you know, all that is the very practical stuff of it. Learning how to serve food in the Soto, because in in all of the Angos, you had to learn how to carry the buckets of food from one tent to the other, and you know, to do that in a harmonious, quiet way, in the ritualistic meals. But there's also just learning how to be with the schedule. Get up in the morning and you respond to the bell and you respond to the Han. You wash your face in a certain way. You put your vestments on, hopefully correctly. You learn how to sit on the tan, and you know, you can't put your feet here, or, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that. And just following those rules, following that schedule, without question. I'm not going to say without complaining, because I did a whole bunch of that. Lots of people do that. But sort of just following without question, for 3 whole months. Letting go of your likes and dislikes for 3 whole months. Understanding that your action or your task for those days affects the tasks of everyone else in that building, in that group of buildings. Understanding that, you know, you have to clean toilets sometimes, without gloves, because if you didn't bring them with you, they didn't give you any. So if you wanted plastic gloves, you gotta, you know, have them in your suitcase. If not, likes and dislikes, you know, wash your hands. And getting beyond all this stuff that I think is right or wrong, being told how to clean in a way that didn't make sense to me. You know, we had to clean out this ditch and we had to push the stuff that was in the ditch, the weeds and the mud and all that to a certain point, and then it would be put, and it didn't make any sense to me. Why don't I just carry it over here, you know? But instead of my own idea of how to clean a ditch, to just do what I was told to do. And at the end of all that, you know, in spite of all my head fussing, you know, turning around and watching that ditch running clear, you know, at the end of the effort that we made. Not because it was done the way I thought it needed to be done, but because it was done. And these little practical things, you know, most of my, in my experience, most of my Anglo experience is that most of your day is spent cleaning, studying, practicing, rather than in Zazen. And part of me was, you know, was really resistant to that, because what have we been told? It's all about shikantaza. It's all about Zazen. So every minute of your day should be Zazen. Yeah, sitting on the tan on a cushion. That should be the important part of the day. And it is. But cleaning out a ditch, you know, with the same kind of effort and well, I'm losing my words here, but the same sort of effort that we put into what we're separating, what I'm separating as Zazen, with the same kind of intent and the same kind of mindfulness and care, you know, is a part of Zazen, is Zazen. If your vow is there. Because for me, it all comes back to vow, in a sense, to this vow to save all beings, to care for all beings, to care for the world and the earth. And this person over here who called me this and this, or this person over here who, you know, dismissed me, or this person over here who is talking behind my back. And the little mouse that ran across the floor. You know, just as I picked up my, you know, my futon. Yeah, all of that. And I think, I guess what I'm trying to say, and I don't want to go on too long, but monastic life for me has been something that is molding me. Right now, I'm not in monastic life. I can totally own that and understand that. You know, that doesn't mean I won't go back in if there's the opportunity. But that monastic experience has put me here. And it's shown me that my likes and dislikes may be irrelevant to this situation. That sometimes I have to make choices, but sometimes I just have to stay where I am and allow it to teach me and allow it to show me. It brings people, you know, the world in my situation brings people into my life with whom I may not have, complete harmony. Not right now, not yet. But with whom I know it is possible, as contentious and as angry and as resistant as we can get. All of these things, I don't have, you don't have to go into Ango for 90 days or any days to know this. I'm not saying you do, but I believe that, the monastic practice has come down to us in this tradition directly from the Buddha through the Chinese masters, through Dogen, and again through Suzuki Roshi, Katagiri, the rest of them. It's changed, and it will continue to change, however it, manifest here in the future. That there's a purpose for it. There's something to be learned from that communal living, from that setting down of the things that we think identify us. I've told the story before, and I'm going to end in just a second, I swear. I remember being on that mountain in Japan, and being someplace where, this Chimyo, this woman who grew up and worked for 20 years and grew up in New York City and, had this certain identity, was never supposed to be, had never pictured herself. And I bet you nobody else pictured me there either, because that's not who I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be this particular thing, this particular being shaped by so and so and such and such, and this and that, and race and class and gender and all these things. And having had every bit of that taken away, stripped away for 90 days, standing on a mountain in this unbelievable place and being none of that, and being a lot more than that, with the possibility of just being, and feeling a great freedom, content, openness for just a few moments. And every single pain in the ass that anger was or had been for me, it was absolutely worth it, still worth it. So I'm not saying that Ango is for everybody, or monastic life is for everybody. But if you ever want to try it, one of the things that, I feel very, very strongly about, one of the things I would like to do as a priest, as a teacher, I can't even say myself as a teacher, whatever, is to be able to allow whoever wants it to be able to experience that in some way. And, there's all kinds of ways to experience it. But I wanted to be there for this next person coming along who might just be able to access it and benefit from it, not in the way that I have, because there's no two ways. There's every single person is going to come away from that in a different way. But to allow it to strip that being of all the garbage and the baggage, in order for that true Buddha nature to pop up for even just 1 second. And I think I'll stop there because I can keep rambling forever. And I think I got 5 minutes. But thank you all for listening. And if there's, I don't know if there's time for questions or comments after all my rambling and rolling all over the place. But
no, that was wonderful,
what do you
Chimyo.
think?
I would love it if you can wait just a couple of minutes and people can unmute themselves and just go ahead and ask
Sure.
questions if you've got them.
Sure, let me mute myself here.
We received one question ahead of time, Chimyo, which was, what does your Dharma name mean, and what does it mean to you?
My Dharma name is, I can't help it. I always feel embarrassed about it. Teijo gave it to me. It means shining wisdom. And what it means to me is, I don't know. It's like, I kind of feel embarrassed to say it because it doesn't for me describe anything. And it's a really, really, if it's an aspirational name, it's like, darn it, Teijo, what's wrong with you? Because it's, really, I don't know. I've only met one other person with that name, but that's what it means. And I don't know that it means anything other than what she says it means to me. But yeah, that's what it is. Sorry.
Hi, Chimyo. It's Michelle Nicole. Long time no see. So what advice would you give this novice who's 1.5 years into her training in a pandemic, who can't go to her temple? And something like the thought of Ango anywhere is like, I just would like a week at this point, And so, so how important do you think I'm going to say old Japanese way, getting up at 3:30 in the morning, although I'm sure we do that here somewhere. How important is that in the training of monks in the West?
I think it can be really important for those who are able to do it. And I don't have any problem with those who are not able to do it, but we need to recognize that that's not what we're doing. Monastic practice is monastic practice to me. And what's not monastic practice doesn't mean it's not practice, but we need to be cognizant of what that practice is pointing us to. We need to make sure that we have, in whatever form that practice takes, those elements there that help in that formation, whether it's some kind of communal service, whatever it is. I can't tell you what it will be. If there's a possibility, that we can experience it in part or over time, to make the effort to have that in our lives so that, you know, it can show us, you know, I've gone to monastic practice, you know, 4 times now. I'm not finished. I know that. And that's just me, you know. I look towards monastic practice for whatever is forming me. But we need to be, I think, serious about preserving it in some way. You see, this is not just for us, you know. It's come down through the ages, you know, been preserved in some form or other, not even the same form, through the ages, for some people to participate in and receive from it. So even if as a teacher, I can't do it myself, that doesn't mean I'm not going to want it for, you know, a student or another person who's coming along, because those experiences are valuable. But what I encourage people to do is, you know, take a, you know, even if you can't go for 90, you know, and I know how difficult that is because it took me 3 years to get to it. And I was almost too old to go at that point because I was in my, you know, early 40s when I ordained. And I think my last stint in Japan, I was turning 50. And yeah, it's difficult and a strain on the body. So there's no shame in not being able to do that. But how do you get that experience in some way if you're not able to just go and spend your life for 3 months or a year, whatever, in a monastery? That being said, we need to not short ourselves, because if there is a possibility to do that, even at my age, you know, I think I should take it and experience it as I do with this body. So I don't know if that answers your question very well. This is a very different culture than Japan. And by necessity, monastic practice is going to change as it comes to these shores, as it develops on these shores. But let's not shortchange ourselves or the future by saying we can't do it. There's ways that we can make sure that those elements are there and remain there for practice as monks, as priests, whatever we're going to call ourselves. So, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there
I
any
would
other,
express-
oh, sorry, Edward, sorry.
Just like to express a note of appreciation. Thank you, Chimyo, for your letting your wisdom shine forth. Appreciate hearing you and meeting you online and sensing your presence here with me. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you. I remember you coming to Great Tree
Yeah,
a couple of years ago.
So was your monastic time after that?
No, I had been at my monastic training happened from 2010 through 2012, and then a little bit in 2014 out in Ryomonji with Shokin Weinkauf. So, you know, my monastic training in Japan was a while ago. My monastic training with Teijo continues.
Continues.
So,
she's a great one to hang out with. So
Oh yeah,
thank
and
you.
she's very and part of my I think part of my traditionalism, if you want to call it that, comes through her. If you know her, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Chimyo. This was great. We appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom, as Edward said, and it's good to see all of you, and we look forward to seeing all of you again at the end of March for our next Dharma Talk. And if you're interested in doing a Dharma Talk for us, you can reach out either to myself or to Anna anytime and let us know, and we'll share a schedule with you. So, thank you all. Feel free to unmute yourselves and say hello, goodbye.
Fine. Thank you, Chimyo.
Thank
Great
you,
talk.
Chimyo.
Thank you, Chimyo. It's great to see you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Chimyo. Great to see you again.
Thank you.